At 64, Ricky Gervais remains one of the most influential and controversial voices in entertainment. A man who can make millions laugh with a single sentence and make entire rooms of celebrities squirm with an unfiltered monologue. He's built a career out of speaking uncomfortable truths, poking fun at power, and refusing to play by anyone's rules but his own. And yet, for all his bluntness on stage and in interviews, there's been one subject he's rarely addressed, with full transparency. His decades-long relationship with writer and producer Jane Fallon, and why, after more than 40 years together, the couple has never married. Fans have speculated, critics have poked, tabloids have guessed, but now, for the first time at 64, Ricky Gervais is opening up not with a punchline or a clever dodge, but with a raw and sincere answer. The truth isn't salacious, it isn't scandalous, it's something deeper, more human, and ultimately far more revealing about the man behind the fame. Ricky met Jane Fallon in 1982, while both were studying at University College London. Long before The Office made him a household name, long before Hollywood came calling, long before Twitter wars and Golden Globe speeches. There was just Ricky and Jane, two young creatives with sharp minds, shared humor, and dreams bigger than the modest flats they lived in. Their connection wasn't built on spectacle or drama. It was quiet, steady, and genuine. As Ricky began his journey in the unpredictable world of comedy and television, Jane built her own successful career as a novelist and television producer, carving out her own space with equal brilliance. And through the decades, they remained inseparable. No scandals, no public feuds, just two people who clearly loved each other. But always the question lingered, why not get married? For years, Ricky responded with jokes. There's no point in us getting married. We don't want any more presents, he'd say with his signature smirk. Or, we'll marry if we need to visit each other in the hospital. It was classic Gervais, clever, evasive, self-deprecating. But behind the humor was a truth he wasn't yet ready to share because, as he now admits, the decision not to marry wasn't born out of cynicism or fear of commitment. It was rooted in something more personal, more philosophical, and shaped by both his upbringing and his evolving understanding of life. In a recent podcast interview, uncharacteristically introspective and free of punchlines, Ricky laid it bare. I've always said we don't need a piece of paper to show we love each other, he began. And that's true, but there's more to it. I grew up watching people get married for the wrong reasons, for appearances, for religion, for pressure, and I promised myself that I'd never do anything just because it was expected. For Ricky, marriage has never been the ultimate symbol of love. Jane and I have been together longer than most married couples I know, he said. We've built a life, we've laughed through grief, we've supported each other's work, we've had pets, moved homes, grown old together. What more could marriage give us? But perhaps the most poignant part of his confession was his acknowledgement of mortality. Over the past few years, Gervais has become increasingly candid about aging, death, and the fleeting nature of fame. His hit Netflix series Afterlife explored grief with a rawness that surprised fans and critics alike, drawing heavily from his own fears and reflections. I thought a lot about death, he said in the interview, and about legacy, and the only thing I care about leaving behind is knowing that I made the people I love happy. Jane's been my world. I don't need a church or a ring or a big party to prove that. He also shared that their decision not to have children was intertwined with their choice not to marry. We talked about it, but it never felt right for us. People don't like hearing that. They assume you're selfish or broken, but we were just fulfilled. We had each other and that was enough. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability in his words was a stark contrast to the biting comedian audiences I used to seeing on stage. It was the real Ricky, a man who built a career tearing down facades, finally letting go of one of his own. Jane, too, has rarely spoken publicly about their relationship, preferring privacy over publicity. But in a rare joint appearance, she echoed Ricky's sentiments. We didn't avoid marriage because we were afraid of it, she said. We avoided it because we already had everything we needed, and we didn't want to change something that worked so beautifully. The respect, admiration, and humor that binds them is palpable. They finish each other's sentences. They tease without malice. They've weathered the storms of fame and the loneliness of success without ever losing sight of each other. For Ricky, the greatest act of rebellion has always been to live authentically, and in an industry obsessed with appearances, he and Jane have quietly built one of the strongest partnerships in show business. No drama, no public breakups, no headlines, just love, laughter, and loyalty. People ask me what the secret is, Ricky, said Anne, I tell them, make each other laugh every day. That's it. Now, as he enters the twilight of his career, still sharp, still fearless, Ricky Gervais isn't changing his tune, but he is deepening it. He's still the guy who will roast Hollywood royalty at an award show, but he's also the man who writes about loss, who walks his aging cat through his garden, who shares quiet dinners with the woman he's loved for over 40 years. And though he's finally admitted why he'll never marry her, what shines through most is that marriage in the traditional sense was never the point. What mattered was the connection, the kind of connection that doesn't need legal status or religious ceremony to feel real. In his closing words on the subject, Ricky said something that lingers. Jane is my partner in every sense of the word, my best friend, my conscience, my favorite person. I don't need a wedding to know that. I just need her. And maybe in a world where relationships are often measured by ceremonies, anniversaries, and labels, Ricky and Jane's story is a reminder that love, real love, doesn't follow scripts. It writes its own. Years after that candid statement, Ricky Gervais still finds himself fielding the same question in interviews and casual conversations. Why haven't he and Jane Fallon ever married? And while his answer has always carried the sharp wit of a world-class comedian, there's now a deeper, more reflective tone when he speaks. At 64, his voice reveals not just the sharpness of satire, but the weight of conviction. We don't need a ceremony to prove we love each other, he often says. And with those words, he shrugs off centuries of cultural pressure. For Ricky and Jane, love has never been about rituals or paperwork. They've lived like a married couple for over 4 decades, sharing a home, a life, laughter, heartbreak, and everything in between. Ricky calls it a fake marriage, but only in the sense that society doesn't see a legal document. They see everything else: devotion, commitment, loyalty, and comfort that can't be written into a contract. They never felt the need to stand before a priest or sign a certificate to confirm what was already obvious. Ricky's belief is simple. True commitment is what happens when no one's watching, not when a room full of guests rise for the bride. He sees no point in inviting religion or ceremonial theatrics into something so profoundly personal. We're already more married than most married people I know, he once joked, but he meant it. There's an authenticity in the way they've chosen to be together, and it's this very refusal to conform that makes their bond stronger. For Ricky, who has long identified as an atheist and a humanist, marriage as a religious or institutional act holds no meaning. What matters to him is the life they've built, the ordinary days that turn into extraordinary years, the inside jokes, the shared silence, the way Jay knows his moods before he does. It's in the small rituals, late-night wine, binge-watching TV shows, morning chats over coffee that their love truly lives. And while fans often expect grand gestures from celebrities, Ricky and Jane have instead given the world a quiet example of devotion that doesn't rely on rings or ceremonies. They've made a conscious choice, and now, all these years later, Ricky openly admits that this path was never a compromise. It was their ideal, no regrets, no apologies. In fact, the absence of marriage has allowed them to define their relationship entirely on their own terms without anyone else's script. And as they continue growing older together, Ricky seems more certain than ever that love in its truest form doesn't need a title. It just needs to people who understand each other deeply, laugh together endlessly, and choose each other again and again every single day. Subscribe to Hollywood Untold for more emotional stories behind music legends and the feuds that shaped rock history. Tap the bell to never miss a beat.